Business Connections Live, the UK's leading online business channel. This is Business Connections Live with Steve Hyland.
Hello there, welcome along. This is Business Connections Live, the program for entrepreneurs, business owners and SMEs. Great show lined up for you today. I've got a terrific guest with me as well. Mind you, if you watched last week's programme, thank you very much for all the kind comments that we've received over the last 7 days. Here we are live again at lunchtime, and on today's show, we're going to be discussing sales. It is, as I've often said, the cornerstone of any organisation, any business. You don't have a business if you're not selling anything. And it isn't just about selling, it's how you go about influencing people, persuading them, and with power and impact. And maybe personally you don't feel that you have power and impact. Is it something that can be learned? Is it something that can be taught? Is it something that you can just absorb and maybe just develop? Well, we're going to answer all those questions for you today. My guest on today's show is the greatest name in the whole world, by the way. Dexter Moscow is our guest, and we're going to be talking about everything to do with selling and how you should go about maybe reintroducing into your business powerful selling. Dexter, it's lovely to have you with us.
Lovely
today.
to see you.
Great to see you here today. Dexter Moscow, I bet a lot of people play on the name. But for those people that don't know who you are, give us your 1 minute water cooler pitch about you.
What about me? First of all, let me say Dexter Moscow is my real name.
It's not a made-up name.
It isn't a made-up name, and it's not a stage name. Although, as you and I know, I worked with QVC, the shopping channel, for many years, both in front of the camera and behind the camera, teaching other people how to present in that environment. Mm-hmm. So the potted history for me is that I have always loved helping people, improving what they do. And from QVC, I had a lot of experience of how to sell to an invisible audience. And now what I do is taking that expertise and some of the processes that I use there to help people sell in a corporate environment.
When you go into large corporates these days and you're talking to sales directors, sales managers, what do you, is there a common thread? Is there a common mistake that you see businesses making? We had Antonio Falco on the program a couple of weeks back, and he too was talking about sales. And he says the biggest problem is inaction. It's people not actually picking the phone up. It's not people going through the process.
Yes.
Do you think that is an issue that many companies have?
I think it's a very important point to make. I think that what's happened with the internet, with email, and it comes back to what I just said about selling to an invisible audience. Majority of people are selling to an invisible audience because they won't pick up the phone. They won't communicate. And the challenge is now that people aren't asking the questions to understand what the needs are of their customers, their colleagues, whoever they're interacting with, and they are selling. And I think the key thing is we hate being sold to. What we enjoy is having a discussion so that people understand our needs and then can service that need.
I mean, there are people out there that when they teach, they're saying, feel, and you hear the expression, feel the customer's pain.
Yes.
But don't start selling too soon.
Yes.
Have we become lazy with the likes of social media, where we are now hoping as sales forces, that we can use social media to actually do the hard work for us? Are we going down that route?
I think we are. I think what I'm finding now, though, is that the pendulum is swinging back. When we were so reliant upon technology to do our selling for us, we now realise, and I forget who coined the phrase, but somebody said, no deal was ever done without a conversation. So I think that what's happening is people are realising that you have to communicate. But communicate in a very effective way. One of the tips that I learned a long time ago is that in any selling conversation, and I'm using selling in its broadest terms, it's not just about selling products, it's selling us first of all, is that the percentage should be 70%, 30%.
Now, which way round? So
they should be doing 70%. Our clients,
70% of the work, the client.
Well, it's 70% of the talking.
All right.
And we should be doing 30% of the talking. But our 30% is asking deeper, more searching questions. So, as you have just said, where is the pain? And how can we move that pain to pleasure or at least resolution?
It's very interesting that you say that we have lost the art of listening, haven't we?
Yes.
And many salespeople, when they come in, instantly what they're trying to do, and I've done it too.
Yeah, me too.
What you're trying to do, you're trying to get, it's features and benefits. Let's get that benefit over.
Yeah.
It's all me, me, me. It's nothing about you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something really that came out of that QVC, that shopping channel experience, where I understood, because you don't know who you're talking to. In the early days we used to get phone calls in so we could speak to people to find out what their needs are. What is missing now is that we have to understand, we have to really delve down and find out what that need is. And then in QVC terms, we could sell to that need. And some of that was an aspiration. Mm-hmm. Some of it may have been a pain. Aspirational selling, I think, is absolutely the key, because then your focus is on the individual that you're speaking to.
Now, we both know that we've both been there, and countless hours sitting in front of cameras going, you really do need this. The difference, of course, I suppose the biggest hurdle is that initial contact.
Yes.
The initial picking up the phone.
Yes.
The initial 20 seconds that you are talking to the potential client.
Yes.
And whereas in shopping TV terms, the product arrives, you sit there, you tell them what they're going to be getting, and then you give all the details. You don't have somebody sitting at home well, you do, but you don't have somebody that you physically feel is sitting there with a button that goes, don't like that, click. That isn't, you don't feel that's physically happening. So yes. you can do your 8, 12, 60, depending on what channel you're on, half hour on, when you're chasing the pounds. But depending on what channel you're actually working on, where you just keep going.
Yes.
And yes, you bring up all the objections yourself, and you put those to bed, and you work your way through the sales process with all your calls to action. But when you pick the phone up, it is so different. How do you get past the 20 seconds?
In fact, I think the key is those 20 to 30 seconds. You asked me, what is my 1-minute pitch? And I think that the mistake that a lot of people make is when they pick up the phone, they go, hi, I'm such and such a company, and I want to tell you about this wonderful product. Completely wrong. Even that 30-70 rule starts there. You say, and I'm a great believer in pushing back. So you would pick up the phone and say, look, I hate making cold calls, or I hate making these kind of selling calls, and I'm sure you hate receiving them. So can I just take 30 seconds of your time to tell you what I do, and if it has no interest for you, then we put the phone down on each other. Now already you're engaging with somebody to say you're in control. Then you offer your 30-second, your very measured 30-second pitch, which translates to what you know about that company, that individual, that they are suffering, so that you give them 3 options. And I call it the 30-second commercial, where it's a pain commercial. Because, and it's again a reality, people buy emotionally, they decide logically. So we have to tap into the emotional aspect, which is normally pain. So if you then say to somebody 3 points of why perhaps it's happening in your organization, is that the case? Then you get an answer. Then you say, look, I promised 30 seconds, but it looks like this is going to be a longer conversation. Can I just take another 2 minutes?
Now, this is qualifying the fact that you can continue the conversation with them.
Yeah, but some people, the majority of people, may well put the phone down on you or say, no, I'm not interested. And that's fine. So you've got the first no out of the way. Okay, is it because what I'm offering you has no value to you at all, or this is not happening in your organization? So you're asking, again, you're asking those questions to elicit responses.
Dexter, do you think there is a definitive way to actually do sales? Because we have so many different techniques that come on the program.
Yes.
So many different people will come on and they will talk to us. There used to be the old one about getting 3 yeses, wasn't there?
Yes, yes.
Yes,
yes.
And yes, and yes again. And once you got the 3 yeses, for instance, getting past your initial receptionist or whatever. So then you find yourself in a position where you've got the 3 yeses, and then they will put you on.
Yes.
So is that so-and-so company? Yes, it is. What's your name? My name's Doreen. So your name's Doreen, is it? Yes, it is. So you're on to your second yes. Do you still need those kind of sales techniques to get past gatekeepers, to get to the people that matter?
It is the greatest problem, getting past gatekeepers. And you have to respect whatever level they're at. And we have to understand what is it that they are responsible for. So if you're phoning a receptionist, the receptionist doesn't need to know what you're selling. They need to know.
Some people use it as a rehearsal, don't they?
Yeah, and I think that is wrong. My belief, and you know, the processes we're talking about are not hypothetical. These are things that I use myself to gain business contracts. So my feeling is when you phone up a receptionist, their one thought is, am I going to get into trouble putting this call through? So you phone and you know the people's, if you do it on spec without knowing the individual that you want to speak to, you're going to lose every time. So you need the internet, you need LinkedIn to find out who you need to speak to. Head of sales, for me it's head of learning or HR department. So I will say, can I speak to John? And they will say, who's calling? It's Dexter. So the receptionist is thinking, they've given me the Christian name, they've given me their first name. Do I put it through or not? So often, and it's the voice of authority. John, please. Who's it calling? Dexter. And so they think, at least I've got to put it through to the PA. When you get it through to the PA, then you have to treat them, because they're the major, the whole concept of the gatekeeper there is, am I going to waste my time putting this through to my boss, who I really have very little time to be with anyway? So you have to respect their time. So it's that 30-second commercial.
The voice of authority. Listen, we're going to come back. We're going to talk more about this. We're also going to talk about the steps to success when it comes to selling as well. That's all to come on this edition of Business Connections Live. My guest today is Dexter Moscow. You know, it's great to have you with us, as always, on a Monday. Here we are, we're live. We're in a very warm studio today. The air conditioning, for some strange reason, has decided that it would warm the studio up as opposed to cool it down. Listen, I hope the weather is fine where you are today and you're enjoying today's program. Don't forget, selling, as that's what we're talking about, one of the most important things in any business. Last week's show, on the other hand, we were talking all about that real personality. I mean, how you go about managing your people. We had a fantastic guest on. Not that Dexter isn't. It was Nigel Risner, business speaker, on how to create impact with your communications. And really, that's why we did today's program, because we felt that having impact when you're selling and having impact with your communications, the two nearly go hand in hand. You should be having impact with everything that you're doing within your business. If you are wasting any time at all, then really, you know, put a bit of impact into it to get the returns that you're looking for, because we're not doing it for fun, are we? We're not in business just to fill the hours between 9 and 5. We're in business for us to make money, for the business to be successful, for us to be feeling fulfilled in our life. And that's why I think this program that we're talking about today and last week's program are just two great shows that you should watch. Watch them back to back. Just to give you a bit of a reminder of what happened on last week's edition of the program, let's look back at what happened last week with Nigel Risner on Business Connections Live. Joining me in the studio today is one of my favourite motivational speakers. Some people would say that he's probably the UK's leading #1 motivational speaker. We've had a few of them on the programme, haven't we? My guest today is Nigel Risner. Nigel, lovely to have you with us.
Nice to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. So I've been speaking all over the world for about 19 years and done lots of work with chief executive groups, which is how I originally started. And then from there started to do conferences, seminars, in-house work. But I've been blessed for the last 7 years to be travelling all over the world doing stuff that I love doing, especially creating impact with my clients. I did a seminar recently and I said, turn up early, be nice, leave them wanting more. And people said, slow down, we've got to write this down. And that was a worry for me, because I thought that was pretty standard. If I had have known at the time that the thing that drives people is what their personal needs are and not money, I would have kept more of my staff. So there's only one thing worse than motivated and trained staff leaving your organisation, and that's untrained and unmotivated staff staying in your organisation. And here's the problem every day, that what happens is, you know, we're doing a message today to owners. Most owners have no idea that what people actually want is time with their children. They want freedom to think. They want to be trusted. They want to get on with what they need to do. So everyone who's watching this program, 20% of your staff are actively thinking of leaving, have thought about leaving, or just waiting for something better to turn up. Richard Branson, who's a massive entrepreneur who does some crazy things, is a massive monkey. So you have a lot of managing directors who are entrepreneurs who've got an idea but can't implement them. And then you have some very staunch, clever people who are managing directors who don't have the energy to enthuse other people. So when I work as a monkey and I'm just messing about and I'm on stage and I don't follow the script, because I didn't read all the stuff that you sent me, because I just don't. So hopefully I'm doing okay.
Seem to be.
But I won't know with that because you're a bit of a monkey too. So you've got two monkeys doing an interview. This is not great news. If you want an organisation to be phenomenal externally, you have to get your internal comms done first. So internal communication to me is the most important. Staff come first and then the customers come second. But if you don't talk well to your staff internally, they talk badly to your external customers. Okay, so my phrase is, if you're in the room, be in the room.
Right.
So I'm in this room, I'm in this studio, and I've got two kids who are somewhere, and I've got a business that's going on elsewhere, and I'm going to the States to speak on Friday in 4 days' time. I've got loads of things going on, and the only thing that matters to me in the whole wide world is you. So you are the only person who I love right now. So it's no use saying to people, turn your phones off, because people are conscious that they don't want to miss anything. So I now say to people, put your phones on silent, and if you are desperate every 20 odd minutes to look at your phone, but get back in the room. Now, what I'm actually saying is, whatever you're charging, increase your fees by 10%, because you are worth it. The problem is, we are our worst competition. We anti-sell, and we're nearly saying no in advance. So I tell people, if you're worth your fee of £500, put it up to 600. If you're worth 5,000, you're worth 6,000 pounds. It's massively hard, but over the next 21 days, what I'd love all the viewers to do is to notice how often they zone out. I'm saying, look at those people you admire and find something that they do that you admire. I'll give you an example. Do this, my friend. Do this. Make a circle like this. Put it to your chin. Yeah, and that's your chin, you see. But the point is, everything that you do when you're communicating, whether it's internal or external, has got to be for the reader and the listener. I often say to people, how many people in the room talk to themselves? The problem is, most people then question themselves, do I talk to myself? Talking to yourself is one thing, that's internal communication. So you need to build yourself up, you need to big yourself up. So as important as external communication is, internal communication is also important. My name is Nigel Risner. My business is Nigel Risner & Associates, and we ask clients to turn themselves from limited to limitless. We want people to be in the room, to really model off the very best organisations that are out there, in everything they do to be passionate, take loads of action, communicate like a zookeeper, and most of all, trust themselves and trust the process.
Nigel Risner there, fantastic program. If you get an opportunity to watch the entire show, it was incredible. It was amusing, it was funny, and he's a very, very smart guy. Currently in America at the moment, and so just goes to show you, he's a guy that's actually at the top of the game at the moment. So Nigel Risner there, Business Connections Live. By the way, if you thought the program was really useful, imagine if you had a program just like that one for your own organisation. Just imagine that for a moment. Maybe you're sending out newsletters at the moment, or you're doing mailing, or you're doing loads of social media. How about engaging your audience in a slightly different way by having a program just like this one for your organisation? It's dead easy to do. If you'd like more details on that, well, why don't you drop us an email? That's the easy way of doing it, to studio@businessconnectionslive.com. A better way of doing it would actually to pick the phone up. We should all pick phones up. We should all communicate. We should all talk to each other. The telephone number is 01784 256 777. You can talk to either myself or to Linda Bazant, who celebrates her birthday, in fact, tomorrow. We won't say how old she was, because she would come in here and she would beat me up. She's not a violent woman, actually, but it is a true story. Walk away, leave it. And if you want to, also, you can follow our train of consciousness on Twitter, getting all sorts of messages in my ear now. BCL Business TV, if you want to do that. And also go along to our Facebook page, where we're getting lots of feedback from people who are watching the programme on Facebook Live. It's a great way, actually, if you are a small business and you're looking for a way to get your message out there. Facebook Live is a very, very powerful platform platform at the moment. I think my only recommendation to you, and maybe we're also guilty of not doing this, is make certain that you do have clear calls to action, not only within the content that you're sending out, but around the content that you're sending out. So people are driven to actually do something. And I think perhaps maybe when we start talking to Dexter again, he'll probably agree with me that we do hesitate all the time at actually doing clear calls to action. We don't make people do what we need them to do. And don't forget too, you can watch over 200 hours of great free business advice by simply going to our website at businessconnectionslive.com. You're watching Business Connections Live. Today's show, we're discussing sales. Don't just sell, influence, persuade with power and impact. My guest on today's show is Dexter Moscow, keynote speaker and also business coach as well. I was kind of alluded there that we are a bit lazy sometimes. We're nearly frightened, I think,
Yes.
to ask people to do something.
Yes.
And how do we get around that? And how do we convince ourselves that that's the right way forward? I mean, what's your call to action when you're phoning somebody up?
If I've had the conversation where there is at least some understanding of I've tapped into something that's causing them aggravation, then my call to action is, what do we do now? It obviously, we've had this conversation. It seems there is more to discuss. Would it be worthwhile getting together for a coffee? Don't ask for a meeting. People immediately think that a meeting is selling. And what we're saying is, don't sell, but inform and consult. So you ask for that coffee. And then if you've struck the right chord, in a 15-minute conversation, no more than that, then you can get in front of them. The key now is how do you, and I'd make no apologies for saying this, how do you control the conversation? How do you get to the point where you ask for the business, which I think is the point that you're making.
So are you leading very nicely onto the 9 steps?
Yes.
I'll tell you what, we've got
Yes.
a slide for this. Let's have a look at it and
Okay.
just introduce us to the process
Okay.
initially. So these are the 9 steps that you need to be looking at. So the 9 steps of sales potential. Just very quick, let's talk us through them and then we'll go through them in detail.
Right. It's an acronym, as you can see, and I love acronyms because it's a means to be able to remember what's happening. This is a step-by-step process. It isn't something that you can jump in and jump into. And I'm using that word jump because what you are trying to do when you are in front of a client is actually to get out as quickly as possible if nothing is going to happen. But you need to create personal impact, first of all. You need to be able to establish that you're the kind of person that they want to spend a period of time with.
So when you say personal impact, what do you mean by that?
It can be that you are going to... Let me give you an example. I was pitching to a Saab dealership. And I wanted
Other cars are available.
Other cars.
Yes.
In fact, I work with Mercedes as well.
And other cars are available.
Yeah. Appreciate that. So a car dealership I walked into, and I wanted to pitch him this video idea that literally, they're beautiful cars, but it's the individual, it's the person that is selling the cars, not just the car. So he kept me waiting. Normally if they know you're going to sell to them, you keep waiting in the reception area. And he walked ultimately across the showroom, and I said to him, do you know what? I know I shouldn't have come here. So he looked at me very quizzically. He said, why? I said, I'm surrounded by all this temptation, these wonderful cars. You could see him visibly take a deep breath out. So he was already thinking something different is going to happen here. So personal impact is not about going in and selling. It's about creating a relationship, but it's being clever about that relationship. Don't look around their office and say, oh, I see you've got, lovely family. You don't know the guy or the woman may be going through a divorce. Or if you see a golf cup and you say, oh, I see you play golf, you don't know what his handicap and the problems he's getting. Yeah. So you have to be smart. You have to say, when we were talking, you were saying that this and this and this situation was causing a problem. I'd like to understand more whether I have any value that I can offer you.
See, is this the issue then, do you think, that many people actually have when it comes to selling, that they've really got to be on their toes to think around the topic they're talking about?
And listen.
But a lot of people aren't that mentally agile.
And you know, it's a situation, I don't know if we'll have time to talk about presenting with power and impact, but the key, and it's the Moscow method I use, it's mindset. If our mindset is, I'm going to go in and be at a sales pitch or even a networking event, and I'm going to tell people what I do because I want their business, that is absolutely the wrong mindset. And in fact, it's the next step of
let's look at the slide once again. So we talked about the personal impact there. So the outline. Explain to me what you mean by outline.
Outline is the agenda. So that you are saying, right, we're going to talk about the things that we spoke about over the phone. Is there anything else that you would like to discuss? Has any situation changed? Because what you may find is the person that you arranged the appointment with to speak to and to ultimately pitch to may have been made redundant at some point. And so he's not going to be there. So you need to outline the agenda. Again, as I said just now, what's been happening for you? What's been happening for the business? What's been happening for you personally? That I can address.
And I suppose the crux of it is it's the you word, isn't it? It's not the me word.
Yes, it's the emotional connection. So the first element of the personal impact and the outline is all about what is happening for you, so that you see me not as a salesperson, but as somebody that might be able to resolve a problem that is keeping you awake at night.
All right, so feeling the customer's pain.
Feeling the customer's
pain. So you're
pain.
outlining your business map, your roadmap, effectively, to the sell. So that's outline. Let's look at the next step on the slide.
The next step, in fact, it should be the largest step of the conversation. And again, 70-30. We're asking a lot of questions to elicit the problems, the pains that they're experiencing, so that we can climb those steps.
So we've done personal impact, outline, and trouble.
What is the pain you're suffering? When you spoke, you said this, and this. What does that mean? So let me give you an example. If we go to a doctor and we've got a pain in our shoulder, and the doctor says, okay, you've got a pain in your shoulder, here's 2 pills, come and see me in a week's time. We feel ill-used. And a doctor doesn't do that. A doctor will say, well, what were you doing? Were you lifting something heavy? Have you been straining yourself in any way? Does it hurt when you lift your arm, put it to the side? Exactly what's good. They're asking for the symptoms to get to the main problem. So when we're asking trouble questions, we're scratching the surface of what could be an itch until it starts becoming a bit of a sore. And we keep on going, having asked permission to ask these questions, that it becomes a running sore, to the point where somebody says to us, you know, you really do understand my problem. How can you help me out of this difficult situation? So you're keeping control all the time. And that trouble step is absolutely key. And again, you said it very clearly. Don't rush in when you thought, I've got to the nub of it. Keep on going, because and so many times I've focused on one particular direction and realized there's a whole load of stuff out here that is causing them aggravation as well. So it is about really not only asking what's happening in the business, it's the emotional connection as well. What is happening for you personally?
What about the danger of becoming overly familiar then with the person you're talking to? Is that not a danger that you have when you're going down that kind of route?
I think as long as you keep the focus on, again, as you said, the ultimate goal, if you like, and that is to sell yourself in as somebody who really understands that person's problems. Maybe you're telling stories of how you've, in fact I say maybe, that you're telling stories of how you've helped other organisations. So it is.
But there's a danger there that you're becoming, it's becoming me, isn't it? You know, this is how I did this for somebody else.
Only because you've identified that they've said that this is a problem for them.
So you're kind of using it nearly like a testimonial to a certain extent.
Yes, I understand. Is this, what I did for this company was such and such.
Would that be something that would help you?
Yes. And so again...
I could do this.
Yeah. Yeah. But, you know, people are... It's the old problem about nobody got fired for hiring IBM, because it's a very well-known brand. So if you're standing in front or sitting in front of a large organisation and they're looking at you and thinking, is this guy big enough for our organisation? Once you start taking the layers of onion skin away, so they think, oh, they've just told me a story that is exactly my experience, and they've been allowed to step into that experience. If that was trusted there, and trust is absolutely key nowadays, because we're let down in so many areas of our life, trust is absolutely key.
So outline what you can do.
Yep.
And give information that will justify and position you as being someone who can truly supply it and has supplied it in the past.
Once you've gone through that trouble step, once you've found out what the pain is, so that you can, it's about authenticity, it's about relevancy, so that you are telling the story that is most effective to that individual's need.
All right, so let's just look at the slide once again, just to remind us where we're going. So you're stepping up through this these individual steps.
Yes.
So our 9 steps of sales potential, we've started with personal impact, where we go in there, where we're showing really an empathy with the customer. You're making them feel comfortable with you. It isn't just a hard sell. Mm-hmm. We've got the outline of where we're going to go, and we're highlighting maybe the issues or the problems that they have within their organisation that we can resolve and we can change.
Yep.
The next step, and we may do this in 2 parts.
Right.
Is the next one is everybody. What do you mean by that?
Often we are invited in at best, or we make an arrangement with somebody and we're sitting in front of them and we realise this is not the decision maker. And it changes very much the way in which we are discussing with them. So even before we step into the room, in that phone call, it's almost saying, I understand obviously that you are the decision maker. Is there anybody else that you would like to invite in the room to have this discussion? Would
you use the word decision maker in your conversation, or would you? Is it you that makes it? Is there a way that you pretty it up a bit so it doesn't sound quite so?
Yeah, but in
selly?
Your face.
Yes.
Between you and I, that's what the mindset is. We want to get to the decision maker. I think you can soften it by saying, is there anybody else that you would like to invite in when we have our meeting?
Hold that thought. We're going to come back. We're going to continue on our steps to success through our sales process. That's all to come very shortly on this edition of Business Connections Live. My guest on today's show is Dexter Moscow. He is a keynote speaker and also a business coach as well. You may well have seen him on TV as well, on QVC, doing selling in a slightly different way. There's still more to come in just a moment. You're watching Business Connections Live. Great to have your company as always. I'm really enjoying today's show. I suppose it is the theory all the time of selling. It's interesting listening to you, because what you say, you're delivering the same information in a slightly different way, and I think that kind of qualifies what all the people who come on our program when they're talking about sales. Fundamentally, there is a process that you have to go through with sales. How you deliver that process may differ across the different people, or the different people who are doing the selling. But fundamentally, that there is a similar process all the time. We're feeling the pain of our customer, and we're identifying it, and we're not coming on, I suppose, at the very beginning, not too strong. And it is, like social media, it is all about relationships. We are creating a relationship. And I think sometimes when we look at the likes of LinkedIn and the other social media platforms, LinkedIn being slightly different, it's because you're in words. It's like the email that you get and you read it in a voice in your head. And the email, when it's been read the way it was meant to be by maybe the author of the email, may be completely different in its inflection and what it's trying to get over. And sometimes that is what gets lost when we're using social media platforms.
Absolutely. I mean, how many times have we received an email which is in capital letters, which effectively means that somebody's shouting?
Yeah.
And so I agree. I think that the tone, the pace is lost when it's purely in an email.
So don't be sending emails and be hoping that it's all going to work there. Let's go back and get some more advice because we take big brands on the program, we get them in, we talk to them and we see if any of these big brands can give us small fish in the sea a few lessons on how we should move forward with our business and make it successful. Michael Johnson joined us. He's the Managing Director of AA Financial Services. A big brand lesson for SMEs, entrepreneurs and small business owners. It was a cracking show. It was Business Connections Live 145. It went out last August, in fact, the 26th. It went out. It was a really, really good show. Some great advice there. Michael is a very genteel man. I've seen him present to different people. Once again, absolutely a true sales professional, really gets it, but also gets the other aspect of sales, which is the marketeering of it as well. So bringing the horse to water is the marketing, and making the horse drink is probably the sales. It's a great show. Just to give you a bit of a taster, here's what Michael said on Business Connections Live.
I'm Michael Johnson. I'm Managing Director of AA Financial Services, and we're talking about taking things to market and some of the things you should be aware of. For my money, it's about having a plan, and having a plan means, firstly, you need to be passionate about what you're doing, but you also need to be objective and ruthless about some of the decisions that you'll make along the way. The plan that I would recommend sort of starts at the top with the big picture, such as understanding the market. Once you've understood the market and where you fit, you would then understand the customer and understand the customer's needs, because there's no point producing a product that doesn't meet a customer's needs. From then, you would go on to define your proposition, to test and prototype your product, and then take it to market with a well thought through business plan. And hopefully from there, it's plain sailing.
Great show, actually. If you do get a chance to watch it, as I said, it's BCL145. That's Business Connections Live program 145. Go to the website, Business Connections Live. Over 200 hours of great programming for you there. There's the website. Even as I speak, it's as if I'm connected to my director psychopathically. Exactly. There we go. The program. You know, how big businesses' experiences can help SMEs. We discussed taking things to market, the things you should be aware of, how you should have a plan. This sounds like the program we're doing today. Be passionate about what you do, be objective and ruthless about some of the decisions that you make along the way. And also recommendations from Michael that start you at the top, at the big picture, which is the understanding the market, which helps you understand your customer and its needs. So how many times do we all do this where we're just, I suppose we're hoping, it's a bit like throwing stuff at a fan and hoping some of it will stick. But if we understand our market a little bit more clearly, if we understand what we're trying to achieve, will some more of that stick more consistently? And that's, after all we're looking for. You're watching Business Connections Live. On today's show, we're discussing Don't Just Sell, Influence and Persuade with Power and Impact. My guest on today's show is Dexter Moscow. He's keynote speaker and also a business coach as well. Let's just go back to the slide, remind ourselves where we were. Let's have a look at that slide once again. We kicked off at personal impact, outlined the trouble, the everybody. Have we finished on the everybody before we go on to the numbers? Is there more to...
I think there's a lot more on everybody, and I think it is right that we should spend some time there. And I want to pick up on a comment that you made that I totally agree with you about this is not rocket science. People have various sales methodologies. What this says is that there is a proven methodology. I've worked with many sales organizations, Dale Carnegie, the Sandler Sales Institute, and so there's nothing really new. So what I've done is to bring some of this learning together. And the key thing is, if you don't have a process, then you'll be subject to the process of the person that you're speaking to. And if you're selling a product or a concept, what that process, their process, is, okay, tell me what you do, tell me how much it's going to cost, and send me a proposal. And we know what happens then. They offer it either to their existing supplier or they give it to your competitors. So what this 9 steps process does is allow us to keep in control.
So are people buying from people or are they buying a product? What are they doing?
People are buying people first, always. And it's that formula that we talked about at the beginning. If you make an emotional connection, and this is what I learned. I was an estate agent many, many years back, and people normally go like that. Although I think politicians are now worse.
Are the now new estate agents, yes.
And bankers, perhaps.
Let me make this clear.
Yes,
yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I didn't like being an estate agent because I hated the duplicity of, I've got this bid, can you go higher? What I did love, and it's my first life lesson, is when you understand the person's emotional needs, then you can create this connection. So what we're doing with this 9-step process is all the way through this, although we're maintaining our understanding of the process, we are always making that emotional connection.
Which is the difference, the fundamental difference, I think, when it comes to on-screen selling.
Yes.
Because you've got to take that position on yourself as well,
yes.
haven't you?
Yes.
You've got to come up with the objections, and you've actually got to do the clarity around what the right answer should be.
Yes, and inviting them to give you the answers to those objections. So a little bit later in the process, you'll see that we're asking them, have they, and we have to be careful with the language, as you said. You can't say, are you the decision maker, especially in this everybody step, but who else do you take advice from? So you're softening that. The key to everybody is if you haven't got the decision maker in your room, then you need to be able to make sure that the person you're speaking to can get the information to that decision maker. So you are schooling them in your product, concept, whatever.
It's very interesting, because we had a meeting just recently, and over a course of a period of a number of weeks, we had several meetings, and each meeting we had, we were moving up the ladder of authority within the organisation.
Yes.
And you could see how people were taking on their individual roles and the way they would react to the more senior body within the room. And I found that absolutely fascinating. And sometimes if you can cut through that and actually get to the decision maker, the person that's making the decisions at the top of the chain, that really is going to resolve and save a lot of time.
And that's the word, time. Our time is as valuable as the people that we're speaking to. You know, there used to be an old concept that the customer is always right. The customer is not always right. The customer lies. We know, because you send a proposal through, and as we said, they give it to somebody else. So we need to maintain control. And if this everybody step, if we haven't done it before we even step into the room, then everybody step says, who else needs to be involved in this? Get them in the room now. I'll go and sit outside in the reception. You bring them in. And I've done that.
Do you think as a salesperson, as a sales professional, that you've got to be, I hesitate at using the word, but brave?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, because we know that rejection is part and parcel of it. When you make those phone calls, you know that 1 out of every 10 may well get an appointment. And out of those 10 appointments, you may get one really important deal. So,
how many calls do you make a week? You're going to say, no, I don't need to anymore.
Well,
they phone me.
No, I do. Do I make as many as I used to? No, because I rely very much on word of mouth. The way that I do it, and it's part and parcel of how I get business, is I do keynote speeches. I do front of room presentations. You and I were talking off camera that Richmond Events is an organisation that I do a lot of masterclasses for, where you have an audience of 20 people that you can really interact with. Recently I was in the Belfry talking to supply chain directors and managers. I'm also associated with an organisation called IGD, which services the grocery industry. So I did a series of masterclasses for them literally around the country. So there was Sainsbury's, there were Tesco's, and other
supermarkets are available, yep.
And so because they could hear the processes, the ideas, and the wins that I experienced, then that's how I gained my business. And certainly that is a recommendation I make for anybody who's out there spending a lot of money on networking, or is doing people are doing telesales for them. Get in front of an audience. You know, an audience of 1 is time well spent if you do the deal. An audience of 20, 50 or whatever, you are really managing your time effectively.
Which just suggests then that this is purely a numbers game, regardless of what your skills and your abilities are. If you talk to enough people, somebody somewhere will actually come back and actually order from you. It's a bit like the monkeys and the typewriters.
It is. It is a numbers game, but you can make those numbers smaller by being in control of those conversations. And as we've just said, if you are saying, okay, who else needs to be involved? If you can't get them in today, let's have another meeting. One of the major organisations, I'm hesitating because I don't want to breach your confidence, but a major retailer for mothers and babies clothing. I first met the HR director. Then she put me in touch, in fact, invited in the head of learning. And it was only once I spoke to those individuals that I spoke to the department heads, and then the deal was done. But it did, if you're talking about big contracts, it takes time. You have to go through the line, if you like.
By the way, have you guessed who that manufacturer is or that retail giant is? Have you? I figured it out, and so did my director. He whispered in my ear. So 10 points for that. Well done. Congratulations. Okay, let's go back to the slide, Dexter, and see. Let's move up our step. We've done the everybody. Numbers looks... that's really important, isn't it? The numbers. So let's talk a little bit about the numbers then.
Numbers is how, the question they're going to ask you is, how much is this going to cost me? To which the response is, not this is X amount it's going to...
A fortune is the normal response.
Eye-wateringly expensive.
How much will it cost? There was a company who's not far from here who were called Light Brigade. They won't mind me using their name because I think they're defunct now, but people would say, why is your company called Light Brigade? And their answer was, because we charge a lot. Which I think is a great name. If only I could come up with one similar to that. That's a fantastic name to have for a business. But the numbers are important, and people hesitate at the numbers. Yes. Nigel last week on the program was saying that we sometimes talk ourselves down. We don't have the confidence to ask the worth that we feel that we actually are worth.
And that's the key to this numbers. You may have a set rate card, but the majority of people will think, what is the problem that I'm going to resolve for this people? What is that worth to the company? Because when you're talking about numbers, and the first thing, I agree with you, if you've got to this point in the conversation and people are still listening to you, you can say, okay, we're going to talk about fees or numbers. Does that mean we're going to do business together? So you're almost doing a pre-close. Mm-hmm. And so you see the reaction. If you've got on that well with them, and we should be by that point, then you can play with this. If that has come to the point where people say, yes, okay, I think we can do business with you, then first of all, bracket the costs.
What do you mean by that?
I mean that say it's between 1,000 and 5,000. Because we haven't yet really got into the nitty-gritty of what I can do for you. So if you're going to talk numbers, bracket them first of all. But I agree with what you're saying. If you're going to
that's
talk...
a very interesting technique, actually. I quite like that. Yep. So, for instance, you would say that's going to be between £2,000 and £5,000 or whatever.
Yeah. Or you know, especially, and we have to be aware of this, and this is also about the everybody step, is who else have you been talking to? Because if we know that there are others involved, we can ask this question. Okay, either we can play the mystery game, or who have you been speaking to? What have they said in terms of this? Because then it was coined by the Sandler Sales Institute, and it said selling is a Broadway play performed by psychiatrists. So you have to act a bit. You and I know this. Mm-hmm. And so you have to be able to say, okay, you just told me that that's the cost that other people have talked about. I think I'm going to frighten you when I talk about how much it's going to cost you. But then you relate it to, okay, what you've told me so far is that this problem is going to cost you X amount. So actually, in these bracketed figures, it's a no-brainer, because then my fees are nothing compared with what it's going to do for you.
Fantastic. Listen, hold the thought. Listen, more to come, and we've still got quite a lot to cram in before the end of the program as well. So we're going to come back to Dexter Moscow. We've got quite a few more steps to get to the top. So we'll try and get through those last steps, but try not to miss out any of the key important information that is sitting on there. So that's still to come on this edition of Business Connections Live. We're talking about don't just sell, influence and persuade with power and impact. My guest on today's show is Dexter Moscow, keynote speaker and also business coach as well. Got more to come on this edition of Business Connections Live. You're watching Business Connections Live. It's great to have your company with us as always. Now, we're getting great response, thousands and thousands of downloads each and every month on iTunes. We need some help, though. We need your help on this one, if you don't mind, please. We'd like you to go to our website, follow a few links, and we'd like you to leave a stunning 5-star review for the program. Now, the reason we're asking you to do this is we want to spread the word. If you look at the analytics, and we all got to look at analytics occasionally, the key audiences for the program are UK, America, and strangely, China is the third largest audience for the program at the moment. Now, we'd love, the way iTunes works is that if people recommend the program, when they watch maybe another business program, then we will become a recommendation afterwards. And we'd like you to help us to push the popularity of Business Connections Live to the top of the league on iTunes. It is dead easy. Just follow this simple process. Go along to the page, you'll find the link. View us in iTunes. That'll take you to this page here. When you're there, find the tab that says ratings and reviews. Click on that tab there, and then that will take you to a page where you can leave your review. You can write a lovely review, tell how nice Dexter is, how nice I am, give us 5 stars, and that will really help promote. But do say something valuable as well. And if you've got any advice, please do leave that advice as well. You can always do all that kind of things, you know, things you like, even things you dislike. You can download the program, you can take it wherever you want on iTunes. Just go along and download the shows. As I said, there are thousands of people doing that. And don't forget as well, the program's available all over the place. Stitcher, Blueberry, Rocco, it is available everywhere. If you want to download it, take it with you, or if you want to watch the live program on either Facebook Live on a Monday or on YouTube, then, well, you're in the right place right now. And just get out there, do it, and use the information to grow your business and make it a success. You're watching Business Connections Live, and my guest on today's show is Dexter Moscow, keynote speaker and business coach. Today we are talking about selling, influence and persuade with power and impact. Right, just remind us where we were on our steps. Should we have a look at the steps?
You have a look at the
Let's
steps
look at
again.
the steps. Here are the steps once again. So
we got to numbers, I think,
so we've got 4 more to go, and we've only got a short length of time to do it. So
Right.
target. Let's talk about target.
Target really is when you've got to the point where you've perhaps started talking about numbers, or at least the conversation is going in that right direction, so that we perhaps need more information. Then it is what happens next. So if you like, the target is what is the goal? Where are we going to take this? What happens next? Am I going to meet with more people? What other information do you need from me? And perhaps it goes into the next step.
So is this more qualifying as well then?
Yes.
So really nailing down
Yes.
the qualifying.
It's what you said right at the beginning, and I certainly agree with this. We want a clear and specific outcome. So if we know that there is a target that we've hit, and they want this further conversation, they want to know more about what we're going to do, then we know that we've got getting to a clear and specific outcome. Often what happens here with this target step is that, okay, send me that proposal. So if it is a larger company, then sometimes you do have to write at least an outline of what you're going to be doing for them. What I always say is never, ever, ever send out that proposal, because we know what happens with that. If they want a proposal, if they want a discussion document, and I always, if I'm going to write that document, I talk about it as a draft discussion document, because then there is a mutuality of honing it to the right level. And then I will say, okay, I'm very happy to do this for you, but I want to table it, which means coming back into the office, to the meeting, wherever, with all of the right people there.
So the danger, of course, being that if you put together a full, detailed proposal, they can then just go off and they can use that as a document to get somebody else in.
Yes. And so we can see already and the thread going through that is creating emotional connection, but keeping in control. This is why this process to me is an absolute no-brainer, because when you come out of the meeting, even if you failed, and that can be the clear and specific outcome, that it's not going to happen, you can tick those steps off and say, I did as much as I could do to win that business. Because the worst possible thing is to come out and think, why did it go wrong? Mm-hmm. So this is our learning curve. This is our lesson for the next time.
I like that. Let's look at the chart once again. The next step up, we're getting closer.
So
the includes
literally is, what are you going to do for me? So often I don't need to go to that step, because I will say, okay, well, let's get together and actually map out what is going to happen.
So are these the benefits? Would they be called the benefits in another language?
It may be exactly what you're going to do. To give you an example, I work with a major toy manufacturer, and what they wanted was, how do they communicate effectively with the internal aspect of their business? How do they make meaningful presentations to them? And how do they deal with their trading partners? So what it included is, what is the kind of problems that those conversations are eliciting? It's almost coming back to the trouble step, because you want to, once you've got to that point where people are bought in, you want them to start feeling that pain again. Because if they're feeling the pain, then they're understanding you're the only person that holds the golden torch or the answers. So I would perhaps say, well, okay, are you disagreeing agreeably? Or are you ignoring the questions and answering in those kind of situations? Because there's a process for that. When you make your presentations, is it all about PowerPoint? Because if it is, then you're losing your audience.
Death by PowerPoint.
Death by PowerPoint.
And we've seen it. I'd like to apologise. You may not be able to read everything that is on this slide, but I'm going to talk through it anyway. I bet you've been there, haven't you? There are people as well that will formulate their thought process by using PowerPoint, won't they?
Yes. So then you can, is that the kind of way that you are giving information? Okay, well then we can look at a way, if you need to incorporate specific figures, then we can look at the process which allows us to get that information over, but to keep the audience engaged. So you're not telling them what the actual process is. What you're saying is, okay, it will include this because you've highlighted that as a need. Does that make sense to you? Yes. So then...
And so you move on. Let's go back to the slide once again, and just a reminder. So afterthoughts.
Now this is
we've done very well, actually.
Absolutely key, because we've been talking for some time with our client or our prospect. I call them suspects because they're not on board yet. So afterthoughts is there anything that I've said that I haven't covered what the real problem is? Because it's like we were saying before, if you're focusing in one direction and there's a whole load of stuff over here that you haven't addressed, afterthoughts is where you get the problems, extra problems out, and where they are hesitating. So you can say, from our conversation, are you 100% bought into it? What's the percentage? So if they say, well, we're about 80%. Well, that's a problem for me. Because I like to make sure it's 100%. So where's the missing 20%?
And do you find that sometimes the buyers are thinking that way? By now, they should be your friends, shouldn't they?
They should be. But there may be things, because we're so caught up, even me, so caught up in the discussion, that I've missed something that they've said. So this afterthoughts gives me an opportunity to go back.
Are you an avid note writer?
Absolutely. And it's absolutely, there's a trick, and it can be done when you're making a presentation or when you're sitting around a boardroom table. Take a pad with you, put a line down the pad. On one side put, now let me see if I can get this right, problems, and on the other side, solutions. Because then the majority of what you're writing is on the problem side. That is a recognition by the people that you're sitting in front of. This person understands me and is making the notes so that he can really be very clear and specific about how he can help.
Good piece of advice on that one. Let's go back to our chart once again. because the last request, we're nearly there. We've actually gone through our 9 steps of the potential, the last request.
Last request. Now, this doesn't mean they're going to take you out and shoot you.
Yes.
I've had a situation like that before. I'll tell you the story if we have time. But last requests is, it may well be that you are not going to do business with them. Your last request is, are we going to do business together? From what you've heard, what it will stand in our way? What is that 20% that will prevent you from us doing business? If you come out and you know that you're not going to do business, there is no harm in saying, can I just ask you one further question? To which majority of people will say, yes, okay. It's clear that we may not be doing business together. Who do you know that what we've talked about would be helpful to them? Referrals. That's the last request. Yes. Always ask for referrals.
It's a process that seems to be straightforward.
Yes.
Understandable.
Yes.
And a roadmap through the sales process,
yes,
which everybody needs. Let's just look at the slide one last time. So we talked then about the personal impact.
Yes.
We then worked our way through I tell you what, a sentence on each of the topics as we say them. So the personal impact, a sentence on that is...
Personal impact, when you meet somebody, make them think differently about you. You're not just a salesperson.
Outline.
The agenda, what you've talked about prior to getting into the room, and anything else that needs to be covered.
Trouble.
What is the problem? What is the pain that they're suffering, so that you can dig deep?
Everybody.
Who else needs to be involved in the conversation?
Numbers.
What's it going to cost in relation to what the value that you bring to the conversation?
Target.
Next steps.
Target
is literally next steps.
Oh, next step, right?
Steps.
Okay, yes.
So it's the second agenda, if you like.
Did I snooze for a moment? Yeah, includes.
Okay, what are we actually going to do for you, but in broad terms, not verbatim, as it were.
Afterthoughts.
What else do we need to discuss, especially when you haven't got the decision maker in the room, because then it gives you an opportunity to school that person once again.
And last request
is, what else can I do for you in terms of referrals? Who else can you introduce me to?
It's been a fascinating hour. It's nearly over. We always ask our guests, and we've kind of done it there, but you're going to do it again.
Right.
We invite our guests to look straight down this camera that's over my shoulder, number 4, and to say who you are, where you're from, and give us what you see are the key takeaways for people who are finding themselves in a daily process of making and generating sales for their business.
Okay.
Dexter, the airwaves are all yours.
Thank you. My name, as you heard, is Dexter Moscow. I appreciate if you've been listening, I hope you've got something of value to it. My key message is this: make the emotional connection, understand that there are facts and figures you need to give them, that's the logic, but our key and our responsibility, like a doctor, is to find out what's causing the problem, is to find out what the pain is. Ask the relevant questions that will enable you to give the relevant answers. The resolution, the pleasure that you can bring to your clients, suspects, prospects and colleagues.
Dexter, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the program today. We've really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
And I hope you found it a real insight into how you can go about looking at sales. And I think sometimes when we talk about sales, it always just feels like it's the sharp suit and, going in there, just really being very sharp and you're going for the sales, really tricking the customer into buying from you. No. That isn't the case. No. What you're doing is you're identifying an issue, you're identifying a problem, and you are selling them solutions. That's what you're talking about. It's been, as I said, a fascinating insight into sales. If you want to, you can go to Dexter's website. It's called audienceDynamics.co.uk. Your personal, financial and company success depends on your ability to positively impact and motivate others. It's a cracking site. There's loads of good information on there, incidentally, and a really good blog as well that I've been reading through, and there's also some free downloads which you'll also get links for on our website as well. So if you want to get more information, if you want to find out more about the services, it's a bit of a family affair, yours, isn't it?
It is indeed. My wife is an executive coach. My son owns a PR company, and we come together with our other consultants to service our clients' needs.
It is a great site to go to. Do go to it and find out more about selling. with influence and also to persuade with power and impact. Dexter Moscow, thank you very much
Steve,
indeed.
it's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much
Thank
indeed.
you.
Okay, let's just do a little bit of housekeeping before we walk out the door today and see who's coming up on Future Programs. We've got Costas, co-founder of Happen.com, is going to be with us. There won't be a live show next week in the UK. It is a bank holiday, so no live show next week. We're going to actually take a day off and lay in the sunshine, which is a lovely thought. Coming up on Future Programs, we've got Samantha Earle. She's the General Manager of Pertemps Driver Training. Deborah Hume from Minerva Engagement. Jackie Jarvis is going to be joining us. She's a great talker. And Warren Knight as well, a man who really does understand everything when it comes to digital marketing. Don't forget, if you'd like to get in contact with us, 01784 256 777. But from all the team here, have yourself an absolutely fantastic week. And from Dexter and myself, we'll see you soon. See you next week then? No, we won't. The week after at 12 noon. Bye for now. Bye-bye.